Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Transfer Nation videocast and podcast. My name is Heather Adams, and I am so thrilled to be here today with Bright Tsagli. So, Bright, we're going to learn about your transfer journey, your community college journey, your philosophy on it all. So, thank you so much for being here today.
Welcome to the Transfer Nation videocast and podcast. Transfer Nation aims to create a network and community of educators who work with and advocate for transfer and post-traditional college students. Our mission is to build community, transform culture, and empower success for transfer educators and students by sharing resources and celebrating all things transfer.
No problem. I'm actually excited to be here to share my story and see how I can add value to our listeners and whoever that come in touch with this content. Yeah.
I love that. I know that you brought something that kind of represents your transfer journey a little bit. Do you want to share that item or artifact with us?
Yeah, this is a notebook from the Kent Cooke Foundation. The Kent Cooke Foundation has been around for a lot of years, and I would say they help top achieving students. They have different programs for community college students, high school students, middle schoolers that kind of help them with whether it's mentorship, navigating the college application process, community college transferring process, and also kind of mentor these kids in the process, help them answer any question that they have in mind in terms of their career-wise or any other, I would say, external situation they probably navigate in.
I love that. How did you learn about Kent Cooke? Because I had not heard about it as a student, and I only heard about it later as a staff member, and I so wish I had known about it.
I would say it was an advice of my PTK advisor, that's Yvonne Erazo at Bronx Community College. I came in, I think it was a flyer. I saw that and I went to her and I had a conversation with her. She told me that she helped a couple of scholars apply. Some of them made it to some finalists, and just a few people were able to be recipient of the scholarship. So that was how I heard about it, did my research, and then I applied the first time. And lucky enough, I was a semi-finalist, but I couldn't. I wasn't selected as a recipient that year, so I ended up applying again. Yeah, so we'll get to that. That's have a whole story to it.
Well, that's the transfer story, right? We're scrappers. We keep going. Well, I love that it sounds like there's so much to your transfer story. It sounds like you've had some really great advisors and mentors along the way. It sounds like you have been really kind of self-resilient in your journey and kind of finding things, even just looking for resources and saying yes to them and meeting new people, as we were talking about earlier today. So I want to just get into the story a little bit. Maybe start with sort of, where did your transfer journey begin? What institutions did you attend, and what was your major? Maybe start there.
So that was a little bit. I was living in Germany when I thought about relocating to the U.S. I was going through a lot in terms of because I wanted to pursue soccer as a professional player. That was part of my dream, to be a professional soccer player. So I kind of obviously did pursue that to a semi-professional level. Got injured in the process, and then it was a lot of pressure from my mother. It was like, "Oh, I told you to go to school up there. You cannot make anything out of soccer." Like, I really kind of feel the point that she was coming from. It was just a lot of projection because she wanted to go to school. And just as a woman and where she was coming from in our culture, the girl child education wasn't prioritized. So that affected her. So all she wanted for me was to have, I would say, college education. So I thought about that, but in that environment, it wasn't really a healthy environment. It was just, I feel like she didn't listen to me, and it was just, I told you to do this and that. So I wanted to relocate. So I was looking in places in the US and then the UK. So I also thought about like scholarship and other options. And somebody told me that, think about community colleges. And they knew that I wasn't going to go for it because I felt like that was beneath me. That was how I thought about it. It was like 2-year college. No, I want to go to a 4-year college. That was my mindset. But then I felt like that has been the best decision, one of the best decisions I made, to enroll at a community college. I applied to a couple of community colleges within CUNY. I think Queensboro, LaGuardia, and Bronx Community College. And I took Bronx Community College because of the location, and also I would say the Ghanaian community there is huge. So that was it for me. And then 2015, I moved to the US to start that journey.
Oh my gosh. What a rich background. There's so much there that I want to talk about. So talk to me then about what it was that made the richness of the community college experience so joyful for you. Because like you let your face lights up when you talk about community college. You're like, I used to think this way about it.
Yeah.
I used to sort of believe this like old school stigma that does, that maybe it was not, it was like it's on a level or something. So what changed? What can you give me some concrete examples about your realization of what community college could offer you?
I would say I went to a very competitive high school. My graduating class, I have a friend that got into MIT. He was I think he was a bronze medalist for the math Olympiad. We studied together, did a lot of things together, and I also had a couple of friends that, came to the US for attended top institutions. So me going to a community college was like, I just sold myself short. Like, that was my mindset. So I kind of put myself in a situation where I was like, you know what, I have to prove to myself that community college is not a place for me. So I had that kind of chip on my shoulder that whether it's academic, sports, I just have to make it not challenging enough. To me, that was just the mindset to go in and just kind of make it like some kind of high school. That's how I saw it, but just going in, it was just more to it, in terms of where I was coming from. I was independent at that point. I have to be mindful in terms of this is where you want to get, but what do you have now? Like I have to be mindful that some of these kids that I went to high school with, they had their families with them, so they had all the support, and I would say that kind of parent just encouraging them. I didn't have that, so it was an advisor that sat me down and we had that conversation. Karen, we still talk, she brought me in one time. I think she saw me just probably gallivanting around the corridor, and she was like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm a student." And he was like, "What's your concentration?" I'm thinking engineering science. And she was like, "You don't know me?" I'm like, "Who are you?" And she said, "I should be your advice." I'm like, "Oh wow, I didn't know they have a thing like that." My college system, we didn't have anything like what is a college advisor, mentor-mentee relationship. It was non-existent. So I didn't really kind of understood how these things impact your life, So she brought me in. We had a conversation. I told her where I was coming from and the kind of things that I wanted to do, and she was like, "Bright, you literally living the life that I wanted to live in a way that I came to this country as an immigrant, just like yourself, and I have to be realistic enough that this is how you're supposed to do it. We have to put in a game plan." Tell you the number of classes you're supposed to take each semester, what to do, what not to do. So I would say that was like a defining moment for me, just going in every Friday, just having conversation, talking to her what I'm going through, and, how she can also find resources to help me. Yeah.
It's so amazing when you can find an advisor and a mentor who's talking you through the whole process and who's doing it early, right? So that you can understand, because I think you hear a lot of stories about transfers who sort of trip through the system on their own and don't know that there's that resource there for them, or they don't meet the right advisor who's open to just chatting and talking and having those frank conversations with you. So it sounds like you really had a great mentor and coach almost in her. And then you also talked about community. You said there's sort of a community. Did you find sort of a sense of belonging or a sense of connection at community college with other students or with faculty members?
I would say anytime I talk about Bronx Community College, it's just a lot of emotions, because that is home. Like that is my family, in a way that they understood what I was going through, whether it was public safety. I had friends who were public safety. The college president was my friend, still is my friend. The ladies in the cafeteria that I'll go in and they'll be like, "You know what? We see something in you, and regardless of what you're going to be going through, like just know that, Bright, you'll be somebody great." So it was a lot of inspiration from coming from these people. So I kind of felt that connection that, what, if there's people see this in me and they haven't heard my story or where I'm coming from, like, I cannot sell myself short.
Okay, well, now I have to visit BCC because that sounds like the best place ever.
It's the best.
I mean, you embraced it, which is,
Yeah.
you embraced it, which was important, as you pointed out, which is hard. It can be a real challenge for folks, right? But also it sounds like there was just this beautiful support network of folks who also embraced you, right? Who really were there to make a difference and obviously had an impact. Yeah. I'm also really interested in your international transfer student story and also your athlete transfer story. I'm watching like Last Chance U on Netflix, about athletes who go to community college. And it's an interesting, unique experience that I don't think is talked about a lot. Tons of athletes transfer from community college to 4-year. Yeah. Tons of international students transfer. And and so it's a community within the community that sometimes isn't talked about. Can you talk a little bit more about what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, I would say just playing on the team, there's a lot of eligibility paperwork you have to fill in. I remember my first season, I couldn't play because I was injured. So I had to just let that go. So my last year, that was like my sophomore year out of community college, I decided to give soccer a shot. So what happened was that during that was the preseason, we had a lot of students, student athlete came in every day to practice, give it everything. We bonded over, and then when school started and we all have to go through the eligibility and paperwork, a lot of people were not eligible. But also aside that, most of these kids were immigrants. So in terms of getting paperwork from their home countries, it was tedious. Like I couldn't even communicate with anyone from my previous high school. That is a burden. And the coordinator for getting the paperwork and making sure everything goes through, they do not want to hear excuses. All they want to see is the paperwork they requested. So that alone is a big hurdle for student or student athlete. You have the GPA requirement. I do understand that, to be able to play sports and stuff like that, you definitely have to get your academics in check, because at the end of the day, like anything can happen. But, once you have your brains, it's going to take you a long way. So I kind of understood, in terms of putting some kind of requirement, but that also kind of burdened most of these kids, because all they want to do is just come there and play. And honestly, some of the greatest sports players we do have, I don't think they will excel academically, so I'm not a big fan in terms of putting these GPA requirements for these athletes, because all they want to do is just play, and some of them can transfer these skills in different ways when it comes to testing, like academic rigor and stuff like that. So, that's a whole different conversation. But these were some of the things that kind of limited us. And aside that, the college was dealing with a different demographics, because within the community college, you have people that are parents, you have people that drop out of high school that took GED. So in terms of students kind of sacrificing part of their time, to come to practice, you're not getting paid. We're not getting any scholarships to play for Division III. Aside that, they could be working full time, making money to support their families and themselves. So that also kind of limited the quality of players that we have. So though it's competitive, but it wasn't really competitive like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we could do a whole podcast on college sports and how, kind of the struggles of that and the kind of the balance of that and whether or not the value system of that. It's so fascinating. Thank you for sharing that part, because I just think it's a really unique corner of the transfer experience that really needs some attention and really needs some focus. And it's just not something that's really in the conversation much. I'm curious about, just for you though, in terms of your transfer journey and transfer story and transfer experience, what was that like, that transition from realization of sport, having sports be kind of like your area of focus, and then realizing you were going to have to shift that, and finding your new major and your new focuses, which I think have changed throughout your time at school, it sounds like. Talk a little bit about that journey.
I would say I was kind of locked in at a very, very young age in terms of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a pilot at some point. I was like, you know what, I want something bigger than that. I wanted to be an astronaut, and I was good at physics and math in high school. So my mind was like, if you're good at math and physics, that's it, like astrophysics or something like that. So I had that locked in terms of mindset. So I was really particular on just concentrating on it was electrical engineering. So I tried to transfer out the first time was 2016. That was the first time that I applied to transfer. I applied to, I think, probably 10 schools. I got rejected. The only college that accepted me was Stony Brook. And no scholarship. The tuition is $45,000 per year for international students, and so it's $90,000 for the next 2 years. But I wasn't graduating yet. I was just, I think, 2 semesters in. So personally, it was just me to put myself out there and see if I probably made it to a top school. I would have left, but that didn't happen. So now I have more time to kind of figure things out. So I tried again. That was 2018. I think 2016, 2017, I tried again. I applied to a limited amount of schools, all rejection. I think I did probably same schools, 10 schools, all rejection, but these were top schools. Like it was just the Ivies. I was so stuck up on the Ivies, MIT, Stanford, and a couple of schools, probably Duke and probably the other ones. Yeah, but all rejections. But during the process, each time, like I understood like the process, and aside that, I made friends because I reached out to people on LinkedIn, be like, hey, like, can you go through my essay, give me feedback? I was doing this, and during the process, I had the chance to also apply to the Kent Cooke Scholarship. So 16, 17, 18, I applied 2017. I was a semifinalist. So I was able to connect with other semifinalists, and aside that, other recipients of the scholarship on Facebook, LinkedIn. I was leveraging these platforms, Instagram, reaching out to these scholars, like in terms of how they navigated their community college experience to put up a very competitive like application. So I made friends and I told them my story. So they were always looking out for me and they understood where I was coming from. We tried it again, I think 2018. I applied to, I think, 4 schools. But at that point, we had a program called the Kaplan Education Foundation. They have Kaplan scholars each year. They select students from community colleges, top achieving student, and then kind of help them with the application process, provide them leadership skills and other soft skills that they like will help them thrive once they transfer, and also that will help them in their life. They had the eligibility problem. Then for me, I couldn't apply because I was an international student. And I think it's because of the funding. You have to be a green card holder or a citizen. So what happened was that I spoke to my advisor about it, Yvonne, and Yvonne had a close ties with, how do I even say, the CEO of the program, that was Nancy. So she told me, like, you know what, you have to reach out to her. She said it so many times. So at one point I'm like, you know what, it doesn't hurt. Let me just reach out. So I put up an email that, hey, I still sometimes go back and read that email that this is who I am in my life at this point. I'm a semifinalist for the Kent Cooke. These are the colleges I'm looking at, and this is what I wanted to do. And I kind of said that even if she cannot do anything, I will literally clean her offices to pay for that. That was just how much I really wanted to be part of this program, because I knew the impact and how that has benefited other students that I met at community college who were part of the program and transferred to top institution with full scholarship, how that has affected and changed their life and the kind of change I wanted for myself. So I had a positive email. I had a reply, and she was like, "But you don't have to clean my flaws, but you know what, I really want to talk to you." So I went in for a 30 minutes interview. I had interaction with her, and I would say that was it. I went in weekly. Like they have a weekly commitment where you go in, they give you the support, walk you through the college, application process. They bring some of these transfer coordinators and admissions officers in to come talk to us about the whole, I would say, the ins and out of the process, So that was really helpful in terms of me applying. So that time around, I picked a handful of colleges, I think 4 of them. It was, I think, liberal art institution, and I applied, I still got rejected. And the angle was that these colleges would give me full funding. That was the angle. But aside that, I had a conversation with one of my advisors that I connected with at Kaplan. She kind of relate because she's first generation. I would say her parents are from both and Ghanaian and Nigerian, so she understood where I was coming from. She was like, "Bright, you didn't come this far to just set your eyes on one thing just because it's engineering." She saw different aspects of me. She was like, "Bright, you give your opinions on everything. I don't think engineering is the path for you." So she gave me a book to read. The book was on people that thought that their life was set on a straight path. People who thought that, all they wanted to be was surgeon or doctors, and then they start practicing in that field, and they felt like that wasn't for them, and they had to change their career. It was like, Bright, you do not want to get to this point and then feel like this is not the path for you. It's good to make the mistakes now. So it's good to kind of explore different things. So that's where the exploration started. I had to dig deep and look at things that I was passionate about, like magazines, news articles that I would just kind of read just at a glance. So little by little, I was just kind of gravitating towards more policy, foreign politics and economics, trying to understand how the world works. So when I graduated in 2017, I knew that I was going to take some time off, because I had to work, pay off the debt that I've incurred over the course of the years. Aside that, also think about how to, win the Jack and Cook again, because I applied 3 times. That was my ticket, because I knew that there was no scholarship out there that would look out for me the way Jack and Cook was gonna help me, because you get 120,000 awarded for undergrad, and then you're eligible for 75,000 of graduate school. I thought about that. I was like, it's either this or nothing. So first time I applied, I was semifinalist. The second time I applied, I wasn't even a semifinalist. That broke my heart. I had the news when I was tutoring. I went straight home. I cried that day. I was like, why do I have to wait and put up a whole competitive application and not a semifinalist? And I even read the essays of other students who were semifinalists. I'm like, what went wrong? So I just took it in. I was like, what, it's live. On to the next thing. So I did a couple of different things, and I was able to land a full-time job with Mindshare. I was doing digital marketing and advertising. So that was interesting, because I never thought I was going to be in that industry. And aside that, it was something new to me. But then because I use Facebook a lot and Instagram, I was like, what, it's something that I could learn. I didn't like it, but as time went on, I fell in love with it. And that was when I won the Jack Kent Cooke Scholarship. So now I was thinking about going back to school. Like, it's either I stay here for the next 3 years, just grind it to be probably a manager, or I just go back to school and go finish that business with my degree. So I had a conversation with my director, and I was like, well, listen, this is a big deal. You really want to go back and get that degree, because that is going to propel you in the future. And during that process, I was also applying to colleges. I applied to Swarthmore, Williams. Williams College was my number one. Yeah, Williams College, Amherst, Brown, Stanford, all these great places. I didn't have, the problem with me is that I just go all in. I didn't have safety. Within the Kaplan program, they said that, you should have safety and target. I just went, it's either this or nothing. So what happened was that during that point in my life, I already applied to change my status as international student. So I was an international student, and I wasn't a green card holder either. So it kind of put me in a whole different group, which made it difficult in terms of financial aid policies, in terms of how that applied to me. So some of these institutions, I had to withdraw my application. And I knew that also had a it played a part in terms of my like the decision process. Because Swarthmore they had to go into a whole special admission on my case because I was getting recruited for soccer. I spoke to the coach and went in and, you know, talked to him, watched me play, and came back. So I told them, like, I'm a semifinalist and this is what's happening. So they took a look at my application and told me that even if I'm awarded the Cooke Scholarship, I wouldn't be eligible for, you know, financial aid from the institution. So I'll be left with probably 35 plus K, like thousand to go, and that's still a lot of money, you know. So at one point they sent me the email, you have to just withdraw your application. And it wasn't that. I did the same thing for Georgetown and a couple of places. So it was just rejections throughout. The only one that stood in was Brown. And even Brown, I was waitlisted to the real program. So it was after that I have to talk to a couple of advisors for them to send, I would say, emails on my behalf, because I think after that you get to send two, I think, recommend. So I spoke to my supervisor to also put in a recommendation on my behalf, you know, because that would talk about the kind of work I did with them when I was interning. So I think that went a long way, and I finally got in. I got into Brown. Yeah, so that whole journey is just a lot.
Great transitions upon transition upon transition. And you've had such, I mean, I'm just struck by your ability to kind of stay engaged and curious and resilient in it all. Like you just kept kind of exploring and looking at, how can I get back? How can I, what's another avenue? What's another way in? You said that you interned where? Where did you intern?
Oh, with Senator Gustavo. It was in the Bronx.
Oh, wow.
You know, I worked on some affordable housing, and we get to survey people around and take the input on how these rent laws are kind of written in complicated languages. Most of them didn't graduate in high school, and majority of that demographics are immigrant, you know, Spanish speakers. And I would say the literature that the landlord provides most of the times is English and complicated. So it's like some of these people are signing their life away. They do not know what they're actually agreeing to. That was something that I cared about, because at one point I didn't have the person that I lived with kicked me out. So it's been something that kind of, I would say, it kind of hit home, because I've been a victim of that. So I've always thought about ways and means to kind of change that. What resources as a community can we help, you know, vulnerable people in the community to make sure that, you know, everyone is doing okay in life, and, you know, we're moving forward as a society.
Yeah, that's great that you got to engage in that kind of on boots on the ground, like, you know, really getting to do that advocacy work, and see how it's working, especially with your interest in the kind of political science. And so, well, I just have a gazillion and one questions, but there's, you know, I don't want to keep you here all day. So, you know, I guess I would say, what's next? So you're in this really amazing transition phase. What's next for Bright? Like, where are you right now, and what are you thinking? So in this process of applying again, and also working and also getting the Jack Kent Cooke, where are you right now in your transfer experience?
I would say now, and I'm just trying to focus and see how I'll be able to do that in terms of, you know, my career post Brown, whether it's going to be the private, but I know that in the long term, I've always thought about being the president of Ghana. You know, I still have it to heart that, you know, if it's in God's plans for me to do it, sure. You know, if not, I have to do it from the West, or be in a place that is going to influence policies that shape Africa, whether it's the UN, the IMF, so be it. You know, so I'm always thinking about that. But I do have the heart of the continent. Like it's always on my mind. I feel like that's something that whatever I'm doing is always behind. I think about it a lot in terms of what China is doing, how that is shaping the continent, resources, infrastructure. You know, somebody growing up where where I grew up in, also feeling some kind of empowerment to know that they could achieve whatever they set their eyes on, without focusing on what is really going on and thinking about the long-term goal and what they can accomplish if they just keep their mind to it, regardless of the noise and what they're going through. It's a lot that comes to it, because I feel like not everybody is given the ability or is given that kind of willpower to be able to keep pressing. So I'm mindful in terms of making that change, because at the end of the day, we have good people. It's like people say we have bad leaders, but leaders are just product of what our education system, our religious bodies, our society. So whatever that community is made up of, whoever rise as a leader is just
It was actually recording right until you were talking about how the leaders, how the education system, right? How it's the education system. So you really, it was so full, and it's so much information in there. And now I want to start a new community college to president. That's my new that's going to be the title of your episode. College to president. Yeah. I think you really are right on about so much, and you clearly, like you said, have the community and the continent in your heart, and are kind of thinking forward about what's possible. Yeah. And it's a testament to your kind of scrapper mentality. I mean, you have reached out, you have developed networks for yourself. You have not taken no for an answer. You have done research on the folks that are kind of in these programs that you're interested in being involved in, and figured out ways that, how can I be involved in that? And it's really, I find it inspiring, and I can't wait till you're president, because it's going to be amazing. So I want to get to, what's the transfer experience like post community college transfer into the rest of your journey out?
Yeah, I would say first of all, I'm grateful to to have this opportunity to attend an Ivy League institution. It's something that I'm grateful for, but I'm also mindful and very critical of how this institution affects not just me, but other people that come after. So I would say they do a decent job in terms of bringing people in. The problem is how they keep us here, going forward, because I feel like they're not, I would say as an institution, they're not doing a good job in terms of the transfer student that they bring in. I mean, I could speak on behalf of the non-traditional student, especially, because we are a very special cohort, because each year Brown brings 10 of us in. I would say within this 10 breakdown, 5 are veterans, and then the 5 non-vet. And even with the 5 non-vet, we do have non-traditional students who are young adults like myself. And then you have the older ones who are in your 50s, 40s with family. So that's a whole different dynamic. So it's kind of hard for us to bond, and there are different resources you can provide for each individual, because we're unique. And I would say that the college is not doing a good job at, because I remember when I transferred in, I was assigned a normal advisor that is given to a regular traditional student. I'm like, wait a minute, how are they going to understand me? I went in and I had a whole conversation. The professor said, I do not know how to help you. I just walked away. And that was it for me. I didn't want to have any interaction with any advisor. I still have this sour taste with me anytime I talk about advising a Brown, because they feel like they do a good job. But when it comes to the real student, because you can bring people in and just expect them to just kind of flourish, knowing that we're not coming from preppy, high school fancy, like most of these kids go, who are super prepared for the academic rigor. It's not that we're not prepared, but it's like different people need different people need different things to kind of help them in this kind of situation that you're not providing. So I would say that has been rough. It's like you have to find ways and means, what works for you, what do not work for you. And in terms of also reaching out to the undergrad, and it's draining, socially awkward, because it's like you want to have that college experience, but your age limits you, you're mature, you have different experiences. You're not a grad student, so you cannot even relate to the grad students. So it's just this kind of awkward situation once you come in as a transfer, especially as a non-traditional student, and Uh, Aside that, I would say some of these professors will love to help, but I feel like they do not know how to go about it, and I feel like that's a problem because I've spoken to some professors and they're used to the regular traditional student, they know what to tell them and it's like a playbook they have. But with us, you need a whole different playbook. And I do not think it's a playbook because we adults and we do have what we want to accomplish. We bring it in some kind of experience with us, so that is really rough. And you have to think through that and know what the kind of education you want to have once you get here. It's a lot of willpower. So the last time I had interaction with one faculty, I was like, at this point, like, I just know that I'm here and I'm grateful, and I'll just put my head down, just grind it, graduate, and know that anytime I have to look back at my Brown experiences, it's just a little bit of regret, and that's what it is. Like, and I'll always say that my community college experience is what shaped me. Yeah.
Well, I'm thrilled that you said that and that you shared that, because as a non-traditional student myself who went back to school at 37, I felt similarly. And if it hadn't been for some really incredible faculty who valued a student in their classroom who had a different point of view or who was older or who had a different experience and had unique needs, I wouldn't have thrived. And what would you say? Is there a piece of advice or what would have made the difference? Because I do think that staff and faculty struggle, right? They want to be able to help. In a perfect world, it's not out of malice. It's just literally out of lack of maybe education or understanding of how they could, like, what is the playbook to deal with to work with and help a student who's not my typical framework of a student that I've decided is what a student looks like. How can I help that student? Like, what would your advice be? Concrete actions they could take?
I would say they can look for people who kind of match up, with our backgrounds, like transfer. They can start from, I would say advisors or mentor or coaches that have similar life trajectory like us. They came in as a transfer, they transferred somewhere. So at least they know how to deal with us, or somebody that has been through a whole non-traditional education. I've met a couple of people like that at Brown, that I just check in. They just check up to see how's everything going and be like, what, hang in there. I've been through it. So that kind of give you that feeling that you're not the only one going through it. So it's like anytime you reach out to those people, they make you feel better and kind of calm your nerves. So I feel like if they're able to get these kind of people and kind of prioritize us, I'm not saying that they shouldn't prioritize the undergrad, but it's like everything is being made to make sure that the undergrads are thriving, the traditional undergrads, but you can't have a program and then alums of the program do donate huge sums of money to the program, and you're not putting in the necessary requirements in terms of bringing in whether it's specialized advice and checking in with the students to kind of know. I mean, I get it, we matured, it's like you have to know what to do, but it's like this whole thing is it's new to some people, because some of us would have forgotten about education and just grind it in the water and see where it goes. So it's like you need some kind of focus or active mentor mentee relationships. So that is something the college needs to work on. And anytime we kind of voice out, because we actually have a petition going on now, because the school is awarding some kind of fund, and they think that, members of the rules program are getting some kind of the non-employment check from the government. So the college is supposed to award us $3,000, and they just giving us half of that. Just assuming that everybody gets this benefit. You cannot just assume. So it's like we trying to have that conversation with them, and it's just back and forth.
And as adult students, you still are students. You still need professional development. You still need coaching and training. You still need guidance. It's just a slightly different conversation, right? You're not having the conversation with a blank slate or somebody who doesn't have rich life experience that they're bringing to the table. I just think that's such swell insight. And I hope that faculty and staff are listening to this and can take a lesson from your experience, because you're excited to be there. you're proud to be there. They've recruited you to be there. And yet the supports that would really be specific to what you need to truly thrive and you're thriving on your own, but, with the supports that a college is supposed to kind of provide, it would be great to just have that shared experience. Like you're right, a transfer specific advisor or somebody who was a transfer. I'm sure there's faculty. I know faculty sometimes haven't taken the transfer route, but some have. And finding those folks who get it, or those folks who are first generation college student, or the folks who sort of understand the pathway and the identity is important. Yeah. Okay, so you've given incredible insights and advice and your own personal journey, and you've shared so much. So as we wrap up, I love to sort of end. You gave a great tip for educators and for faculty. What's your one tip for transfer students? So if a transfer student is listening to this, and you've given a lot of incredible advice, but do you have a tip for somebody who's either struggling with it or trying to figure out if they should go to community college or trying to find their way? What would you say?
I would say they should go to community college. It's great people that have been through community colleges, and it's a good platform, like a springboard. That's how they should see community college as, because I use community college as a springboard, to get myself into, where I am now. Because when I came to this country, if I probably started at an institution like Brown, I would have dropped out, for whatever reason. But I feel like community college will help you prepare in terms of give you some kind of challenging course load. In case it's not challenging, take more honors courses. That's what I did. At least it kind of set you up or prepare you for the kind of course load you're going to handle once you get to these institutions. But I also understand that it's different demographics. You have parents, working full time, taking care of their kids, also trying to get education. So that component, I do understand, but, it's just like, be gentle on yourself and just know that going to community college is perfectly okay. Education is education. The degree you have is not going to have your age on it. So regardless of your age, do not feel any type of way. Just go get that degree for whatever reason that it means to you. Because at the end of the day, I feel like once you start, you're going to finish it. The most important thing is the person you become during those years at a community college. And anytime I look back now, I'm filled with joy, especially talking about Bronx Community College, because I feel like I give it my all and it blessed me in different ways. So, that's all I can say if I did answer your question. But
that was
community college is everything.
Answer. That was a perfect answer. I couldn't agree more, as you know, but I love hearing your perspective and your story about your transfer journey. Bright, this has just been such an inspirational conversation. I'm really excited to see what's up for you next. So I'm thrilled to get to know you and be connected now, Bright. And thank you so much for doing this podcast.
No problem.
Thank you so much for listening. To continue the transfer conversation, be sure to join the Transfer Nation Facebook group at tinyurl.com/wearetransfernation. You can also follow us on Instagram at We Are Transfer Nation and on Twitter at Transfer Pride. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at tinyurl.com/tnationtube. If you have ideas for future episodes of the Transfer Nation videocast and podcast, please email us at wearetransfernation@gmail.com. We can't wait to continue celebrating all things transfer with you. And as always, in Transfer Pride.